Still on fee payment. As you can see, these are loaded invoices that are here. So let's walk through the environment in this section of tutorial. At the top here, we have the invoice ID as the criteria for sorting this information. That means this information are sorted based on the ID, which is this column here. We also have the invoice pay here. That means if at all you want to sort it based on the payment, that is the amount paid so far, you can switch from this invoice ID to invoice pay. So far, since none of them are paid, the information assorted is still the same. That means there are no changes. As you can see, what you're seeing here are the list of invoices for all the templates for this school level and for session and term here. If you want to see all the receipts also, assuming there are payments, you switch from invoices to receipts. So there are no receipts made so far. That means there are no payment made so far. So let's switch it back to the invoices. There are some cases where students are having old debts. That means they're owing for previous terms and you want them to clear the debts here, or you want to see the debts here. For the school management, you will see the show old debts here. So if you check on show old debts, an additional column is added called old debts. That will give you any old debt the student is owing. So if in case you need to clear, or you want the school student or the parent to clear those debts, so you can show that column to see it there. On the right hand side will give you the number of items, in this case 5 invoices. If you switch here, there are none there, so we have 5 here. Then we have the tools that give you the things you can do with these invoices in groups. To apply any of these tools, you must ensure to check the items you are trying to deal with or the invoices you are trying to deal with, and apply the tools. For instance, to delete the invoices, you click delete. To export it into an Excel file, you click export. To waive some conditions, for instance, assuming there is an invoice that has a late payment attached to it, but the student don't want to pay, or you probably want to give them bonuses by just waiving it off, you can use the waive command here. You can also add discount and VAT to these invoices all at once, assuming your school need to pay some VAT, or you've not considered VAT before you create the invoices. You can apply that here. There are also different tools for receipts. As the receipt has the delete receipt, export receipt, and also approve. The approved receipts comes from when there are what they call manual payments. Like for instance, there is a bank payment, you have to record those information here on the platform. So you have to approve them to be considered, okay, yes, these receipts have been paid for. So because it's possible that a parent can log into their platform and also record a payment there, the payment will be shown on your end here, but you have to approve if that payment is valid or if that payment was actually made. If that payment is not made, you disapprove it. That means it won't be considered as payment made for your school account or for fees. That is that on that aspect. Below, when you click on load record, it gives you the title of these invoices. You pick different templates to load. It will also load for that session and term for that template. You see here in this template here, we have 3 students, 3 invoices, 0 receipts, and 0 approved receipts and 0 unapproved receipts. I'm do same for nursery 2 here in this case here. Same thing here. So but let's stick to all templates and load. As you can see, we have 5 students, 5 invoices. Take note, a student can have more than one invoice depending on if that student meets the criteria of different templates. The student can meet criteria for 2 templates or more. So that means they might need to have more than one invoice. For instance, there are students that may meet criteria that have a template for fees, for school fees, and also for lesson fee. So take note of that so much, that a student must not have only one template. They might have more than one template. In this case here, the students seem to have one template because each of them meet just one criteria for different templates. That's why they're appearing in this form here. Below it is the invoices. You can see the invoices have the invoice ID. Who this invoice was assigned, for instance, this student here, this student here, male, female. The class for which they are currently, this person is the student body, the nursery 1A. When it was last updated, the status of the debt, As you can see, these are all full debts. If I try to load invoices that have been cleared, and I pick cleared there and click load here, you can see 0. None have been cleared. Let's use partial debt and load. So there are no partial debt because they are all full debt. If we use all debt and load, it loads for all debt. So we can simply stick it to all statuses as previously. Alright, so that is that. Then we have the total amount for each of the invoices. Now this amount could vary based on the template that was used for creating the invoices. And this amount also could vary if the students are allowed to tick some items that are not compulsory. Take note, when we created the fee collectible, the items that may not be compulsory, like transport. So if a student on their end say we don't want to go with the school transport system, so that means we will not pay for transport, they can choose to edit or remove the item from their payment, from their invoices. I'm going to show you how to do that here. So far paid colon is 0. Now this is the total debt. This is the total amount. This is what that currently owing. So let's see how to make payment in this case here, which this also applies to the students or to the parents too. To make payment for a particular invoice, we have the pay button. Now this pay button here shows mostly when there are some debt here being owed. You see the pay button. There's also one called refund button, but the refund comes in when you're dealing with receipts, but we're dealing with invoices now. So we're going to make payment. But before we make payment, you can even click here to view the invoice. This is the invoice for that student here. The student can do this also and probably print out. You can see this invoice applied. The net amount is 186,400. It was issued on this date, and it's going to be due probably the end of the term. And it was issued to Priscilla with this currency. This is her email address and phone number. These are the items in the invoices. This is what she's currently owing. As you can see, there are no payments so far. I'm going to go ahead to close this now, and let's come back here. If a student wishes to remove some items that probably, or even the admin or the cashier, the person handling this, wishes to remove some items, maybe the student or the parents say, oh, they do not pay some items. You go to edit here. The edit here will list all the items that are optional so that you can take it off. For instance, this student says, please remove math lesson. That means they don't want to offer math lesson. So I'm going to go ahead to check here and remove. Apply. Successful. As you can see here, the total amount has reduced to 158,400 naira, whereas the rest are the same. Why? Because we excluded one item called math lesson. Also, in some schools, it's possible this is your first time using this feature. In Next app, there are some debts the student probably have been owing before you use this app. If I want to come to extra and add an extra item, for instance, let's assume they were owing before you start using this service. You can say old debt here, give it a name, or you can give it the amount first. Old debt is 200,000. You can give it the amount or name called old debt and simply add. So if that is it, you can add the item. So this amount has increased from 158,400 to 300,400. This is how to deal with any backlog you had before you start using Next app. So that means this is the total debt. If you go to the view invoice, you see that the extra item you've added shows it as comes in here. You can see we have old debts, which is 200,000 naira. It's an item. This is how to add extra information to your invoices or to different invoices. Now, this extra information can be added only from the administrative end or from any manager that has the privilege to add invoices or to edit invoices or to make changes. Let's go to how to make payments. So let's assume we want to make payment for this student here. But before then, you can see here when we added the extra information, there is an icon. When you hover upon it, you see the information, one extra item has been added here. So let's make payment. In making payment, this is a payment dialog box. This also show up for the parents, for the students too. To make payment of invoices, you simply would see the ID of the invoice you are dealing with at that particular time. In this case, you are dealing with particular student whose invoice ID is this. This is the debt There are no installment. That's why you can see this icon there. You're dealing with this student currently called Priscilla. You cannot edit their name. If you don't want to deal with these students currently, you want to switch to the next student at once. Instead of closing this environment and going to the next student, you can simply still be in this environment and use the navigational button here to switch from this student, which is 1 out of 5, to the next student. If it relates with the student you want to deal with, fine. If it doesn't relate, you keep going until you see the student you're trying to deal with. If this is it, ensure that you are dealing with the right invoice ID, the right person with the right debt, and also the right information. So let's go back to the first person that we're dealing with, which is Priscilla. We have what they call mode of payments. There are 2 of them. First one is the online payment. The next one is the offline. This mode of payment, cash on hand, bank transfer, check, crypto, point of sale, and others are considered manual payment or offline, meaning that when you use them to make payment, those payments will not be approved by default. But if you are using online payment like Paystack, for instance, for a school, if you're going to use this, you will have to go through the tutorial of how to set up a Paystack account for your school and bind it to your portal so that you can start doing online payment using Paystack. There are other kinds of online payment which we would integrate in the future, for instance, PayPal or Flutterwave or other forms that probably a school will probably want us to integrate so can make online payment easier for them. So we'll have the online Paystack here, but let's take it back to let's assume bank transfer, assuming you want to record payment offline or record payment. So a student come to you and probably made 200,000 payment out of their total debt. Take note, in this one here, this about debt here, there are no installments, so that's why you can make as much. So this is what it is in Naira and in credit. You can also record the date. You can say, okay, probably he made the payment now, but if it's not now, you have to pick the date or enter the date for which that payment was being made. Then you also enter the source information. For instance, you want to get the receipt information, or bank information. The person make payment from his bank account, First Bank, and you send it to the school bank account, say 2215. I'm just giving some sample stuff here. Then the bank. Now I had to record this information because we're dealing with bank transfer. For different types of information, you can come up with the source information and destination information. These are very key for administrations or for financial officers to look at when they're dealing with this payment. Assuming you are done here, below, if the school need to add their bank account so students can see the bank account from here, they'll add it on the organization end. Once you add the bank account, it will show up there, but so far there are no bank account here for this school. Assuming this is it and you want to record this payment, just click process payment. So the payment has been processed successfully. As you can see here, this is 200,000 Naira that has been recorded. The reason why it appears below here is because this payment have not been approved, but it's a payment nonetheless. If we go to the view again, as you can see, the payment is not shown here because it is not approved yet. Let's switch to dealing with receipts. Once a payment is made, a receipt will be generated on behalf of that payment. So let's switch to receipts. In receipt section, we have only one, which is the payment that we just made last. As you can see, if you are a manager or you have the privilege to approve this receipt, you discover that first of all, this receipt is not approved. So to approve a receipt, you can simply click on the check here, go to the tools and click approve. Look for the approval status and approve. Once you approve the receipt, you are simply saying that this receipt was valid payment. So if you go back to invoices, you can see that it's no longer below, it's now considered a valid payment, and the debt has now been reduced to 158,000. If we switch back to the view receipts, as you can see here, the payment has been recorded here. As you can see, 200,000. The debt left is 158,400 Naira. So that is that, and that is how to make payment on SAP here. On the receipts, you can also check other informations, like for instance, you can check the payer who made these payments. You can also view the receipts. This is the receipts of that payment. It looks like. You can see the school name, the address, the transaction dates, the information concerning the payments and the amount, the amount in word 200,000, the receipt ID, the status was successful, other kinds of information. This information can be modified to fit how your receipt should look like. So that's how to make online payment on an invoice. The next tutorial, we're going to show you how to do an offline payment on an invoice.